The last time the three of us were together on a video, we were standing in confetti in Dallas, and now we are here on our on the grind. Do you feel like you're on the grind, Ari?
I want confetti cake, birthday cake ice cream from Walmart.
What's your favorite ice cream?
Chocolate. I'm simple.
Chocolate, for real, straight up chocolate?
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis, Ari Wasserman here back at Ohio State inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center.
Actually, we were together at the spring game, or at the celebration on video.
Were we on a video there? All right, scratch the beginning. We're here for the start of spring football. The Buckeyes took the field on Tuesday morning. They're practicing in the morning this spring, I think because it fits guys' class schedules. But we got to watch the first maybe 20 minutes, first like 35 minutes of real practice on Tuesday morning. Then we talked to Urban Meyer afterward. There are a lot of returning guys on this team. We all are going to talk about the quarterback battle. We saw Braxton Miller throw a little bit. We saw J.T. Barrett out there with his ankle recovering, doing a little bit. But they have a lot of guys back. There are lots of things that are locked down on this team. So who could be a surprise of this spring? A year ago, the first day of spring football, we came out and some little skinny linebacker from the Columbus area who was a high school quarterback was out running with the ones, and everybody was like, what's Darron Lee doing out there? And then we know what Darron Lee did. What do you think, Ari? Who could that be? We didn't see a lot today. Who could be maybe the Darron Lee kind of spring surprise for Ohio State football this year?
I'm going to steal yours that we talked about, because that's what I do. And I'm going to say Johnnie Dixon. He's not much of a surprise, but he did. How many times has Ohio State recruited star players from Florida that are wide receivers and they just kind of come here and never do anything? It's kind of been a trend the last few years. Johnnie Dixon, I think, is the exception. But the reason why I'm going to put him in the surprise category is because he came off of knee surgeries on both knees, some arthritis stuff going on. But I think that he's a pure talent in terms of just the complete player. And Ohio State lost a deep threat in Devin Smith. They do return a few receivers that were here last year. But between Evan Spencer and Devin Smith, there's going to be a lot of opportunity at that position group to really make a difference. And I just think Johnnie Dixon is, if healthy, the most likely to step in and really make a difference on this year's team.
You know, it's hard. I'm not sure who even other candidates are for that. Bill, you wrote about the defensive line, and Urban Meyer had talked about, that's obviously a spot where they need to find some guys, and he was a little, disappointed with some of the options last year. Is there a guy you think in that mix who could be that kind of surprise, or is there not that kind of guy on defense?
Yeah, I don't know, because I think to be a surprise, I think, obviously I wasn't here, but Darron Lee, as I said, kind of came out of nowhere. And the guys they have in the mix right now on defensive line to replace Michael Bennett or Tommy Shutt and Donovan Munger and Michael Hill maybe is a guy, because we don't know too much about him. But Shutt and Munger are guys who played sparingly, but they did play last year. So I don't know if it can be a surprise, and I think that's what's troubling Urban Meyer right now. He doesn't really seem to be a guy there who can grab it and take hold of it. And I know it's early and it's the first day of spring, but it's sort of a carryover from last season, and he doesn't quite know what he has there yet on the inside of that defensive line.
Michael Hill should not be a surprise at this point.
No, we wrote about him when we did this stuff right when the season ended, about our Next Man Up series, talking about young guys who could have an opportunity. He's the guy we wrote about on the defensive line because, he was a pretty big-time recruit. But then it was interesting to hear the way Urban Meyer characterized those interior defensive line options. And we couldn't tell in the first 35 minutes that any defensive lineman looked ready to, jump out and grab that. Ari said he stole mine. I just really did. Just Johnnie Dixon, knowing that he was hurt last year, when you watched him, he just looked good. He just looked fast, and he was making his cuts, and it was like, oh, if you would have said, go through these guys and say who was hurt last year, you wouldn't point to him. There's a guy that we like that we've been writing about forever, Eric Smith from Glenville. He's a second-year safety. His problem is he's got two young veteran starters ahead of him in Von Bell and Tyvis Powell. But Eric Smith running with the twos at safety today. They were so clueless when they're freshmen. He played special teams a lot last year as a freshman, which showed they liked him. He just looked a little more comfortable in what he was doing. And I think if they needed him, he looks like maybe he's the kind of guy who would be ready. It's just a matter of he's not going to pass Tyvis Powell or Von Bell.
It's just interesting because we did that Breaking Bama series, and Eric Smith was just kind of like almost the afterthought, or maybe Marcellus Jones, but behind Marshawn Lattimore. But then he committed to Ohio State with the other guys and went on to the high school all-star circuit and just lit it up. And I mean, you look at the guy, he's got a very complete body, the perfect safety body. He's athletic, he wants to hit you, he flies around, and I think it's somebody that maybe even the nickel package or something, if they can rework stuff around, sometimes they can move.
They need a nickel back.
They need a nickel.
Armani Reeves' career is over. They do need a nickel back.
And the point I'm making is that, who knows if he's ready to play nickel, or they could slide Tyvus, who has some experience at that position, and move Eric in those types of positions. I just think that we've heard a lot of really good things about him. His body seems to be complete, and what we've seen on special teams, he likes to hit people, and he does seem to be kind of the perfect fit of what they might need on the back end of their defense, especially if there's a spot.
I just think that this team is not going to be full of surprises right now, because not only do they have the established guys, but then they have, the guys who are waiting are big-time recruits. Yeah. I'll be curious if there's really an off-the-radar guy. Sam Hubbard's a guy you could easily throw into this mix. For a guy who redshirted, Sam Hubbard's name comes up more than practically anybody on the team.
You know who else comes up a lot? And this is Bill's guy, but Paris Campbell's name gets brought up a lot. And I think sometimes when they recruit the position, H-back, offensive skill position as heavily as they do, it's easy to lose some guys in the mix. But he came with Dante Booker, who was another name we heard. And I think that, he might be somebody that could surprise. I mean, they're all big-time recruits.
You could see when the H-backs were working today, it was Jalen Marshall and Paris Campbell were the two guys, because Dontre Wilson wasn't practicing today. And Bill, Paris Campbell from even seeing him in high school. I mean, he is a guy, he fits that, but it's a matter of, he's not going to take Jalen Marshall's spot, but at least he's going to get a chance after redshirting last year.
Yeah, and I think he could be good enough that he kind of forces Urban Meyer's hand, and if you can't get him in an H-back because Dontre and Jalen are there, then maybe he could be the deep threat they're looking for, because they don't quite know who that is. Johnnie Dixon's the name that came up. McLaurin was a name that came up when we were talking to Zach Smith on signing day. But Paris Campbell, too, I mean, the kid's got wheels. I know he wasn't the deep threat in high school. He was a running back, but he can run just as well as anybody on this team.
He's pretty big, too. I think people, assume that he's an H-back, so he's 5'9", but he's over 6 feet, isn't he? So, I think he could be that. It's so much. It's like, I think that Ohio State at the receiver position wants to get out of the mold of Devin Smith only runs deep routes, and this guy only does this. I think they want everybody to do everything, which is why I like Johnnie Dixon, and maybe why Paris Campbell can maybe morph into something, and they could get a really well-rounded. Because as good as the receivers were, they had a lot of specialties last year between, Evan Spencer's blocking ability and Devin Smith's deep threat, and Jalen Marshall was kind of the possession guy at times, so from the H-back spot. But yeah, certainly want to have well-rounded, big-time guys.
I think Jalen Marshall could really go nuts in the fall too. There's going to be some catches out there to be made. Michael Thomas is kind of an all-around guy, but Jalen Marshall, he was making some grabs today off some Cardale Jones zings where he was reaching up and making the grabs. So anyway, we got to cut it short, man. I know we haven't done a video for a while, but at some point we got to stop talking. Bill Landis, Ari Wasserman, Doug Lesmerises, we haven't seen you for a while. You're going to see us all spring. We'll see you on Thursday. The Ohio State quarterbacks will be talking with us.
How about basketball?
And Ari's not going to be here Thursday because he's going to be in Chicago with the basketball team, where the Buckeyes will be playing in the Big Ten tournament. So make sure you follow our coverage of that. So once again, in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, Ari, Doug, Bill, thanks for watching here at cleveland.com.